8 Sleep makes a product that is amazing, which I love. It's called the Pod, and it fits around your existing mattress and cools down your bed so you can sleep better. They just released the newest model called the Pod 4 Ultra, which in addition to cooling down or heating up your bed, can even lift up your head when you're snoring so you can breathe better. It's incredible. To get $350 off, go to 8sleep.com/Pacman and use code Pacman. The link is in the description. Welcome, everybody. Hope you had a good Labor Day weekend, and welcome to the fall season of the David Pacman Show. It is election season, and labor particularly of interest this time around, Labor Day and the election, because of the focus on workers' rights, unions, Donald Trump and J.D. Vance attempting to frame themselves as the ticket that is for the average worker, even though this is obviously and patently absurd. And on the other hand, you have Kamala Harris and Tim Walz doing a genuinely pretty good job at not only saying the right things when it comes to supporting workers, but proposing the right policies and actually being able to walk the walk, not only talk the talk. And so we're going to look at this in a sort of review of Labor Day weekend. It was a major Labor Day weekend with regard to the campaign, except for the fact that Donald Trump was missing on Labor Day, other than an unhinged post to Truth Central. So we're going to get out to all of these different things. But to begin with, I want to start with Kamala Harris in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and Tim Walz in Wisconsin, two critical states in general and two states of particular importance when it comes to organized labor, given the prevalence of factory, union, and other organized jobs in these particular states. So we start with Kamala Harris in Pittsburgh, and we will build to the labor part, but just in general, Kamala Harris continuing to speak very clearly and directly to workers and to labor and to the average person, and just doing a good job of connecting with voters.
Because of course, that's the nature of who we are as Americans. We have dreams. We can see what is possible unburdened by what has been. We have aspirations. We have ambitions. And the system that is a good system is one that supports that and allows people the opportunity to go where they can see and imagine themselves to be. That's what I'm talking about when I talk about an opportunity economy. We fight for a future where every senior can retire with dignity. And so we will continue to defend Social Security and Medicare and pensions.
Now, as she continued to give this progressive economic message, someone from the crowd shouted out about Trump, he's going to jail. And Kamala Harris, not making any mistakes, following due process and law and order and saying, the courts will handle that. We're going to deal with the election.
Donald Trump is trying to pull us backward, including back to a time before workers had the freedom to organize.
He's going to jail.
Well, the courts will handle that, and we will handle November. How about that? We'll handle November. Let the courts handle that other thing.
Now, of course, that is the law and order message, not erratically and apoplectically demanding people be jailed or imprisoned, especially when, like Hillary Clinton, she's not even been charged with a crime, never mind convicted. And Kamala Harris making it clear that it is actually she and Tim Walz who are the party of law and order. And then going back to this message on Labor Day about workers, about organized labor, about respecting the average American.
We fight knowing it's some backward thinking for those folks who have been suggesting for years that the measure of the strength of a leader is based on who you beat down. You know, that's the stuff they're pushing. That the measure of the strength of a leader is based on who you beat down, when we know the true measure of the strength of a leader is based on who you lift up. Who you lift up. Do you fight for workers? Do you fight for families? Do you fight for those who must be seen and heard and deserve the dignity that comes with hard work?
What's brilliant about this is that you're combining the message of being for labor with the message about how the other side is effectively just bullies. Trump and Vance going on about who can we put down? Childless cat ladies, or biological mothers, or biologically not stepmoms, or this whole deranged thing that JD Vance has put together, or Trump, where, hey, vote for me because Kamala's laugh is no good. Vote for me because Kamala used to be Indian and she became black, as he wildly said. Vote for me because of these lurid anecdotes of violence that I can completely out of context tell you. That's a very different message from, hey, vote for us because we are going to put together a package of policies which will let people be free to decide, here's the field I want to work in, regardless of having to calculate, will I have health care? Here's a package that we are going to put together that is going to level the playing field, not to achieve equality of outcome, but to achieve equality of opportunity or something close to it. We're going to lift people up. Combining that with the backbone of it is the American worker. The people that Donald Trump has spent his entire life wanting to be kept isolated from. So really staying on message on Labor Day. Now, President Joe Biden also spoke at this event and did also directly address, given that it was Labor Day, the issue of workers and labor.
Folks, we made a lot of progress, and Kamala and I are going to build on that progress, and she's going to build on it. I'll be on the sidelines, but I'll do everything I can to help. So look, I'm not joking when I say, this is not a joke. When I said this when I was running in 2020, a lot of people didn't believe me. You did, but you didn't believe me. It's all at risk because of Donald Trump, literally. With a stroke of the pen, he can get rid of a lot of this. And do you think this guy gives a damn about your pensions? No, I'm serious. Do you think he loses even an instant of sleep over it? Do you think he cares about all the work you do every day and how hard it is? No. Do you think he cares about good paying jobs for hard-working people who built this economy? No. Hell. He regards picket lines. He'd rather cross one than walk one. But I have no problem walking the picket line. Never.
And of course, President Joe Biden, the only sitting president to join a picket line with striking workers in American history that we've been able to find. Joe Biden also poking fun at how it was endlessly infrastructure week when Donald Trump was president, and we were always 2 weeks away from his new health care plan, I might add.
Remember Trump for 4 years promised every month infrastructure week. For 4 years he promised that. He didn't build a damn thing. Nothing. I mean, not nothing. Well, thanks to our infrastructure law, Pennsylvania so far has received $17 billion. $17 billion.
So this was Trump, and this was Trump missing on Labor Day, and it was Harris, and it was Biden. And now I want to address that other sort of elephant in the room. Where the hell was Donald Trump on Labor Day? By all accounts, Donald Trump suffered the worst Labor Day of his political life yesterday. And this was not just, oh, Kamala Harris is holding a rally with Joe Biden, but I'm not really sure what Trump is up to. This was not, oh, Tim Walz is holding a rally in Wisconsin, but I'm not really sure what JD Vance is up to. It was noticed even by corporate media that as the Harris-Walz ticket was out there, meeting with workers, speaking to workers in critical states, particularly for organized labor, Donald Trump is just kind of missing. And here's an MSNBC report about exactly this.
To see Donald Trump, or frankly, to not see Donald Trump on the campaign trail seems like a real unforced error. Something, if you want to stand with labor, you show up on Labor Day, right? That's kind of the mission. You contrast that with what we're seeing from the Harris campaign, which is a very intentional rollout for the first time together in this new formulation with Harris at the top of the ticket and Biden no longer on it. is the president and the vice president as a ticket showing up for a campaign event here?
So listen, we are going to get to this a little bit later because some people wrote to me over the weekend about the Bernie to Trump pipeline and the fraught nature of populist messaging that often doesn't have progressive policy with it. So we're going to get to it. But this is something much more superficial. It's Labor Day and Trump Vance are missing while Harris Walz are in key labor states. I am going to put up on the screen what Donald Trump put out. Donald Trump put out a troth on Truth Social for Labor Day, where he said, "Happy Labor Day to all of our American workers who represent the shining example of hard work." By the way, there's random capital letters all over this thing. "Shining example of hard work and ingenuity. Under Comrade Kamala Harris, all Americans are suffering during this holiday weekend. High gas prices, transportation costs are up, and grocery prices are through the roof. We can't keep living under this weak and failed, quote, leadership." That's Trump on Labor Day. And meanwhile, we saw Vice President Harris in Pittsburgh. We're going to look at a little bit more of that now. We're going to look at Tim Walz. Here is Vice President Kamala Harris reminding us the race will be tight to the end, but labor knows the way we win this thing.
So, friends, 64 days until the most election of our lives, and probably one of the most important in the life of our nation, truly. And we know this is going to be a tight race to the very end. It's going to be a tight race to the very end. So let's not pay too much attention to those polls, because as unions and labor knows best, we know what it's like to be the underdog. And we are the underdog in this race. And we have some hard work then ahead of us. But here's the beauty of us in this room. We like hard work. Hard work is good work. Hard work is joyful work.
So Kamala Harris reminding the audience, no matter what you see in the polls, and we will look at the polls in a moment, we've got to work to the very end. Tim Walz in Wisconsin, similarly with a sort of unity message.
We respect differences. That's your opinion. Look, we're sitting here together, Brewers and Twins fans, Vikings and Packers. Look, we respect it. But on things like healthcare and what books I read and democracy, we all live by that very simple golden rule. Mind your own damn business. Mind your own business.
Tim Walz continuing to be really, really good at connecting with crowds in this way. And here's a little bit more from Tim Walz in Milwaukee, Wisconsin yesterday.
This guy has made it clear how he stands. He's sitting down at Mar-a-Lago after he got elected president, and this was his exact quote. He's talking to a bunch of folks at Mar-a-Lago. "You're rich as hell, and we're going to give you a tax cut." At the same time, he was telling workers they get paid too much already. That's who this guy is. You tell me who in Wisconsin is sitting around saying, "Damn, I wish they'd give billionaires tax cuts and screw me over. Damn, I wish they'd take my health care away. I wish they'd underfund my public school. I wish they would make my job more difficult and more dangerous. And then at the end of the day, I wish they'd make me work till I'm 75 years old." No one's saying that. No one's asking for that agenda. What they're asking for is to be treated fairly with dignity. That's what we have.
So Tim Walz very much on message on Labor Day. As I mentioned, Joe Biden also speaking, and Biden seemingly also connecting with the crowd.
She'll be a historic pro-union president. So, folks, we got one more job to do together. Let me ask you, are you ready to fight? Are you ready to win? Are you ready to elect Kamala Harris, our next president of the United States of America?
A very different image of a guy in Joe Biden who genuinely likes his vice president, as Harris does Walz. Very different than Trump, who seems to have growing contempt for J.D. Vance, the guy that he reportedly only selected, contrary to almost everyone around him's preferences, only because Don Jr. and Eric Trump told him, hey, here's the guy that you should pick. So where does this leave us on this disastrous Labor Day for Donald Trump? Well, it leaves us with Kamala Harris's biggest national lead in the polling since this thing started. Now, wait, David, didn't you say last week that her lead had peaked at 1.5? And didn't you tell us the week before that she had reached a 1.0% lead? And didn't you tell us the week before that it had shifted from a small Trump lead to a small Kamala Harris lead? The answer is yes. We have seen a linear trajectory where Kamala Harris went from being down a couple of points when she took over for Joe Biden on the ticket to leading by half a point, to leading by 1 point, to leading by 1.5 points, and now leading by 1.8 on average in the national polling, the largest lead she has had so far. Now, it is still, as they've been saying, 60 plus days until this election. But if we look at Labor Day, and we look at the largest polling lead she's held so far, and we look at Trump missing on Labor Day except for a stupid message on Truth Social, compared with what Harris Walls are up to, you have to like the position you're in, but you still do have to execute. So let's take a break. We're going to get caught up on everything from the long weekend. I will address this Bernie to Trump pipeline thing that I heard from many of you about. Make sure you're subscribed to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/The David Pakman Show. I always get hot when I sleep. It's plagued me my whole life, but I found the solution, and it is 8 Sleep. Our sponsor, 8 Sleep, has released the newest model of the Pod, the incredible device that fits right over your mattress like a fitted sheet. It can cool down your bed to just 20 degrees below the room temperature, or it can heat your bed up, which can be useful in the winter or for muscle relaxation. I keep mine on the cold setting. It is a great feeling to sleep with one of these. I just wake up more refreshed, and science has shown that lowering your body temperature at night can let you sleep better and feel better the next day. And 8 Sleep's new model, the Pod 4 Ultra, has a revolutionary new feature. It can detect when you are snoring and lift your head so that you can breathe better. Pod 4 Ultra also introduces an adjustable base that fits between your mattress and your bed frame to add reading and sleeping positions. Go to 8sleep.com/Pakman. Use code Pakman to get $350 off the Pod 4 Ultra. The link is in the description. Unlike other programs you may watch or listen to, the David Pakman Show primarily depends on the support of our audience. The most direct and efficient way is through the membership program that you can find at joinpakman.com. This is a way in which platforms don't take increasingly bigger slices of the money that is earmarked for us. All but 2.9%, which is what we pay to swipe credit and debit cards, goes directly to the show. Many may not know this, but when you make a pledge on Patreon, or when you make a super chat on YouTube, or whatever other means you might use, anywhere from 10 up to even 40% of each dollar that you believe you are sending to the show you are trying to support goes to the platform, 10 to 40%. When you sign up at joinpakman.com, all but 2.9% stays inside, and you can get some great membership perks, including the daily bonus show, an extra show for our paid members, daily audio feeds of the show, daily video feeds of the show, all stripped of commercials, and you get the show hours earlier than everybody else. So I invite you at this critical juncture for American democracy, grab a membership at joinpakman.com. And remember that you can also use the coupon code SAVEDEMOCRACY24 for a sizable discount available to everybody. No permission needed. Just take the discount if you so please. Let's get into a little bit of the nittier and grittier campaign strategy that's going on now and take a look at a few maps. Some people don't have maps, as Miss South Carolina once famously told us, but we have maps today. Let's talk about New Hampshire and let's talk about North Carolina. There is new reporting that the Trump campaign is abandoning New Hampshire on the belief that it is gone. It is only the first few days of September. We've just passed Labor Day, and the reporting is that they're pulling the plug on New Hampshire. They don't believe they can win. They believe it is in the bag for Kamala Harris and are pulling funding and staffers from the state. This is based on leaked insider emails from the Trump campaign. They, quote, no longer think New Hampshire is winnable and are pulling back. Tom Mountain, former Republican Party vice chair in Massachusetts, sent an email to volunteers saying the campaign has determined New Hampshire is no longer a battleground state and that Trump is sure to lose by an even larger margin in New Hampshire than he did in 2016 and 2020. Now, there are two sides to this story. First of all, the polling. We don't have a ton of new polling in New Hampshire. There's one poll from August that shows Harris +5. There's two polls from late July. One shows Harris +4. One shows Harris +6. So on average, you average this together. It's basically a 5-point lead for Kamala Harris. You might say, well, I mean, 5, that doesn't seem like. New Hampshire is a unique state in a lot of different ways. The margins are often very, very small. And at this stage of the game, a signal that says it's all Harris all the way by 5 points is really a sign that that is not going to go well for Donald Trump. Now, here's the counterpoint in terms of what this means for the November election. And there's two interpretations. Interpretation number one is the one I'm sort of alluding to here. And this is a map of the 2020 results that I have on the screen. Interpretation number one of the Trump campaign bailing in New Hampshire this early is we have a potential landslide here. You would normally fight for New Hampshire all the way to the end. And it's a very, very bad sign for Donald Trump. But there's a counter narrative, and I think it's important to acknowledge it, which is Trump won in 2016 without New Hampshire, and Trump lost in 2020 without New Hampshire. And in a sense, New Hampshire, with its 4 electoral votes, is unlikely to be the difference maker. And case in point, if we start with last election's map, and we were to flip New Hampshire to Trump, which brings them just a little bit closer, it doesn't really change the dynamics in the sense that if Trump can get Georgia and Arizona, even with New Hampshire, it is still not enough. He would need something else. If Trump is unable to get Georgia and Arizona and they stay with Biden, but he's able to flip 2 of the 3 Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania. You know, if he gets Pennsylvania and Michigan, he wins. In this one scenario, New Hampshire matters because if you flip New Hampshire back, you have this unicorn scenario, 269 to 269. But that is considered an extremely unlikely scenario. If you look at flipping Wisconsin instead of Michigan, then it is not enough even with New Hampshire. And so the point I'm trying to make is that as you go through these different scenarios, the odds that New Hampshire becomes the difference maker are very, very low. Would you like to have it? Sure. But you can really interpret this 2 different ways. The default reflexive one is, wow, they're giving up on New Hampshire. This thing is over. I think the more cautious and prudent approach is in most scenarios, New Hampshire doesn't make a difference. He won in 2016 without it, and he lost in 2020 without it. And save for this 269 scenario that lots of people like to talk about, but is mathematically very unlikely, it is not likely to be a place actually worth fighting for Donald Trump. So sign of disaster is interpretation number one. Pragmatic, calculated decision is interpretation number 2. Now, I do want to say one other thing. Donald Trump, there's competing reports about what's happening in North Carolina. And in fact, let's maybe put this back up on the board here. North Carolina, which Donald Trump won in 2020. There are reports that say Trump's giving up on North Carolina because he is cutting spending there, reportedly from 10 to 3 million. I don't think that's the right narrative. To me, the right narrative in North Carolina is Trump is having to spend money in North Carolina. Yes, he's spending less money next month than he did last month. But the fact that Trump is even having to think about fighting for North Carolina, that's genuinely a bad sign for Donald Trump and potentially a good sign for Kamala Harris. So that's the latest as far as the states go. Let's now talk about what's going on with this election and Donald Trump's wife. Anthony Scaramucci made what some are describing as bombshell claims that Melania Trump wants Kamala Harris to win and that she hates Donald Trump. I am going to argue, I don't think these are really the bombshell claims that some headlines are making them out to be. It's pretty obvious that Melania Trump has not wanted anything to do with this entire political Donald Trump. She wishes he had never run for president. They don't speak. They've reportedly renegotiated a prenup that includes her staying with him through the campaign, even though she's never anywhere on the campaign trail. So anyway, here's Anthony Scaramucci telling our friend Ben Meiselas, the only person who might want Trump to lose more than he wants Trump to lose is Melania herself.
You're saying no one wants her to win more than you.
Nobody wants her to win more than me. Maybe Melania Trump. That could be the only person I think of, because she hates him. Like I judge the hatred of Donald Trump by the Melania standard. Like Ben hates Trump, but slightly less than Melania. My wife hates Trump as much as Melania. I've met one person that actually hates Trump more than Melania. That's General Milley. He's the only guy I've met so far that actually hates him more than Melania. You know what I mean? I always judge the hatred of Trump by the Melania standard.
Well, Trump called for the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Milley, to be killed.
Yes,
he called for him to be executed.
He's the despicable guy for doing that. And it's also caused a threat to General Milley and his family. And the fact that we're even talking about an enemies list in a country like ours, which is the longest standing Republican representative democracy, 250 years, it's just a disgusting thing that we're actually having.
All right. So the claim here is Melania hates Trump. She wants Kamala Harris to win. Seems kind of obvious, to be honest. I don't know whether Anthony Scaramucci has any special insight into this or knowledge, but what he's saying is extraordinarily plausible. And the entire Donald Trump political foray into politics has been terrible for Melania Trump. This hardly seems like a bombshell in a sense, because it's hard to think of anything that has wreaked more havoc into the relationship of Trump and Melania, but also just into Melania Trump's life, who seems to want nothing to do. It was supposedly a big deal when she did something to the rose garden, like got rid of the roses or something, made it look absolutely terrible. And that's like all she really wanted to do. A grammatical error about be best having to be massaged into a supposed initiative that Melania Trump was getting involved in. So I think Anthony Scaramucci's instinct is completely and totally correct. If you ask me, is Melania Trump secretly voting for Kamala Harris? I have no idea, but it seems abundantly clear that she not only hates Donald Trump, but wants him to lose, partially because there is reporting that their relationship continuing as this farcical facade that is all that's left is about not calling attention to the failed relationship. It's funny. If the evangelicals still went for Trump, despite the cheating, the divorces, the multiple marriages, the children with different women, the hush money payoffs to porn stars, if they ultimately went with Trump, I think they'd go with Trump even if he was officially single. Trump's essentially a single guy, but if he were officially single, this totally ridiculous notion that the evangelicals really need a family man and blah, 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 the whole thing. They abandoned every single principle other than he has nominally a wife and still voted for the guy. I don't really think it would make a difference, but from the reporting, it seems clear that Trump and the people around him do believe it would make a difference and that it's better for him politically if he is still at least ostensibly married to Melania Trump. So I think Melania also wants him to lose so that she can finally get the hell out of there. Interesting from Anthony Scaramucci, not necessarily the bombshell that some are making it out to be. Let's take a very quick break. Make sure you've pre-ordered my forthcoming book, The Echo Machine, which you can find at davidpakman.com/echo or anywhere books, ebooks, or audiobooks are sold. I'll have an update on the order numbers tomorrow, probably. Very quick break and right back after this. Don't forget that the best way to support the David Pakman Show is by becoming a member, which gives you access to the daily bonus show, the regular show with no commercials. You also get access to our entire archive of every episode dating back a really long time and plenty of other awesome membership perks. Go to joinpakman.com, joinpakman.com. Failed former President Donald Trump was interviewed in what was supposed to be a complete and total softball interview by Fox News' Mark Levin, and Trump's brain appeared to short circuit. You could almost hear gears grinding to a halt as Donald Trump struggled for vocabulary, attempting to use the English language to convey meaning and substance, and failing very significantly. He does not seem to know what he is saying, talking about how he thinks God thinks he's going to fix our very sick country. See if you can unravel this mess of an attempt to speak English.
But no, I think you think like if you believed in God, you believe in God more. And somebody said like, why? And I'd like to think that God thinks that I'm going to straighten out our country. Our country is so sick and it's so broken. Our country is just broken. And maybe that was the reason. I don't know. I don't know.
It's perfectly logical and sensible to assume that God sent Trump to win in 2016, to lose in 2020, but to try to steal it, but fail to do so, to then get indicted, to remind people how poorly he's been treated so that then he can come back and save the country from the sick status it now holds in 2024. Perfect. I feel stupid saying it. Perfectly logical to think that that is what God did. Hilariously, Mark Levin frames up a question in a completely, it's actually a hilariously dishonest way to frame a question. Listen to this.
You've been a man of faith. You go to church.
Okay, both of those are lies. Trump is not a man of faith. His complete religious reawakening was fabricated to get into politics. He doesn't go to church. I looked. The last time I was able to find evidence that Trump went to church was December of 2021. For a man of faith who's deeply spiritual and believes in God, it's been almost 3 years since he stepped inside a church, other than just to give a political speech, that we were able to find.
You believe in God. Has this further your belief, your commitment, and obviously God, in addition to that chart, saved your life. He has a purpose for you.
Right.
Do you think about these things?
Saved Trump's life, killed an innocent bystander standing behind Trump, but hey, put that aside.
Well, I think you believe more because when you speak to experts, like my sons who are shooting experts, but when you speak to experts, they said there was no chance that he could have missed from that distance.
Right. He knows God saved him and killed an innocent bystander because his sons who are experts in shooting, this is so stupid. His sons who are experts in shooting told him, oh no, you don't miss at that distance. Wow. Wow. If there were ever a more inspirational spiritual story that would reinvigorate anyone's belief in the higher power, it would be Trump's sons' opinions about shooting with rifles. Trump still seemingly confused about BleachBit, the software program, seeming to believe it's a physical substance like an acid.
Now, this is the United States. When it came to Hillary, you remember they subpoenaed her stuff and she BleachBit. That's where it's basically acid.
Yeah. Just as a reminder, Trump is confused here between software used to delete information from hard drives, like a software called BleachBit. Trump seeming to think that it is like dipping a hard drive in an acidic solution. Man, I feel stupid even having to explain this. So anyway, that's Trump still confused about that. Confusedly, Trump saying that the way Kamala Harris treated Mike Pence is horrible.
But I agreed to all these things that I normally wouldn't agree to. Now they have Kamala, who they say has many deficiencies, but she's a nasty person. The way she treated Mike Pence was horrible. The way she treats people is horrible. But the way she treated Justice Kavanaugh during that hearing, in the history of Congress, nobody's been treated that way.
So first of all, Kamala Harris's questioning of then Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh was one of the better performances, actually trying to hold him to account and pin him down on what do you believe and what do you know. But the irony, the sick irony of Trump saying Kamala treated Mike Pence so horribly. Trump sent a mob to kill Mike Pence. And he says, oh, Kamala treated him horribly because of the things she said, I guess during their debate, I don't even know. Trump addressing the word progressive. This is actually pretty funny.
With them because they're Trump haters at the highest level, and CNN is a Trump hater. Basically, they're liberals. I don't like to use the word progressive. It's too pretty a word. It's such a pretty word. They're progressive. Progressive means you think into the future.
Yeah.
They're actually thinking to 3,000 years ago.
No. We are thinking about the future. That's exactly what we're thinking about. We're thinking about questions like, in the future, should there be people that just don't have health care? Is that something we should have in the future? I believe the answer is no. In the future, should there be hunger when we have so much food waste and producing more food than ever? Should there still be people who go hungry? I believe the answer is no. Should we have poverty and people below a certain standard of living in the future? No, that's what it means. It is progressive. We are thinking about the future. And Trump's sort of like having a moment there where he's like, wait a second, that I can't use that word because that actually sounds like they're thinking about the future, which we are. And then finally, in this ridiculous softball interview gone wrong, Donald Trump confirming, I did interfere with the presidential election, but I should be allowed to do it.
Whoever heard you get indicted for interfering with a presidential election where you have every right to do it? You get indicted and...
You have every right to do it. They indicted me for interfering with a presidential election in which I had every right to interfere. Wait a second. I thought the argument was you didn't do it. Now you're saying you did do it, but it was wrong to indict you because you had every right to do it. I actually think sometimes the softball interviews go worse for Trump because his guard is down. Not that Trump is subjecting himself to seriously critical interviews. Check out that recent one with the Sean Davis, Navy SEAL dude, if you want to see an example. But the softball interviews almost seem to go worse, seemingly because his guard is down and he starts speaking extemporaneously and making no sense. Now, if you thought this interview was bad, we must look at Trump's rallies earlier this weekend. A visibly dripping and soaking wet, swollen Trump, his right eye swollen almost completely shut as sweat just dripped off of him, held rallies in Johnstown, Pennsylvania, and Pottersville, Michigan. Trump, I don't think I've ever seen him this bad. Here is Trump claiming that his non sequiturs, when he talks about a shark and a boat and an electric vehicle and wind and birds and noise and Kamala and communists, and he says that when he's doing that, he's weaving stories together in a way that is impressive to college English professors. This man is sick. He's sick.
You know, I do the weave. You know what the weave is? I'll talk about like 9 different things and they all come back brilliantly together. And it's like, and friends of mine that are like English professors, they say, it's the most brilliant thing I've ever seen. But the fake news, you know what they say? He rambled.
That has to be some form of mental illness. The English professors come up to me and they say, sir, we can't believe how great your English is. We've never seen people do with words the things you're able to do. And when you talked about the late, great Hannibal Lecter, followed with how noise cancer kills birds and sharks are electrocuted by by electric boats. Or it's brilliant. We want to forget about Shakespeare. Put Beowulf in the trash. James Joyce be damned. We will now teach Trump speeches in English class, sir. It's delusional, and it must be some form of mental illness. I can't think of any other explanation. During one of Trump's rallies, a guy tried to attack the media. All of the reporters and the cameras, they're up on sort of like a raised stage at the back of the venue. And here is a guy getting up there and trying to attack the media. Of course, weaponized by Trump, who says the media is the enemy of the people. Police police show up. It's all chaos. Take a look at that. So the guy's trying to climb in and attack media, and bystanders start grabbing him, and then police show up. All right, it's very visual, so I won't play all of it because we have a lot of people that are just listening. But essentially, a kerfuffle develops where police show up and they pull this guy down, and some people are cheering the guy and some people are attacking the media further verbally. And here's the bottom line. Trump attacks the media, and one of his rally goers attacks the media. Trump says on January 6th, here's what we're going to do, and then his followers go and they do it. These are people predisposed to being weaponized in physically violent ways. And then Trump shows up and he weaponizes them in violent ways. So no surprise there. Then we get to the profuse sweating. Donald Trump, just dripping sweat and saying things that are really odd.
And as you deserve, a president who respects you, talks to you, and who levels with you, puts it right on the level, and who always has your best interests and has your back. I have your back, I have your heart, and I have every other part of your body.
Trump has it's not just some. Trump has every part of your body. That's a message we can really get behind. Trump with an allegedly racist message. He talked about Congressman Byron Donalds, who's black, and said, he's one of the smart ones. You have a lot of them who aren't quite so good. Of course, two interpretations. You've got a lot of dumb black people, but Byron Donalds is one of the smart black people, more benign. You have a lot of members of Congress that are not so good, but Byron Donalds is one of the good ones. I don't know anymore.
And he immediately, the first thing he did was approve the Nord Stream pipeline. And then they'd say, Mr. Congress, oh, look who we have. Byron, stand up, please. Superstar of the future. He's already a superstar, but he's a superstar of the future. Byron Donalds, Florida. Wow, that's nice to have you here. That's good. He's great. He's great. He knows exactly what I'm talking about. That one is smart. You have smart ones and you have some that aren't quite so good. But we have a group of people that...
So definitely very edgy stuff. Unclear if it's overt and blatant racism or just another one of these confusions and misunderstandings. Donald Trump claims that no one knows Kamala Harris's last name, which is funny coming from a guy who can't seem to say her first name.
But the fake news is doing everything possible, everything they can to help Kamala Harris. Do you ever notice nobody knows what her last name is? I go, okay, I'm going to give you the first name. Tell me the last name. I say, Kamala. They have no idea who the hell she is.
It's weird that in his sentence saying no one knows her last name, he's mispronouncing her first name. It's all really weird. And then maybe most notably from this speech, Trump appeared to endorse Kamala Harris for president.
The American people are smart. They will not be manipulated by Hollywood, the fake news media, and all of the advertising. And you deserve a president who respects you, talks to you, who levels with you, and who always has your best interests at heart.
Sounds pretty good. That person is most certainly not Donald Trump. And then finally, apropos of nothing, Trump says Barack Obama's middle name a few times, which is yet another one of these racist dog whistles, of course.
And a general told me, sir, we can't do that. They won't take him back. I said, why? Because Obama tried very hard to take him back. Barack Hussein Obama. Has anybody ever heard of Barack Hussein Obama? Remember Rush Limbaugh? Barack Hussein Obama. Rush, the great Rush Limbaugh, right? We miss Rush. We miss him. But they
Right. He said Hussein. That really made me think about economic policy when he reminded us that 2 presidents ago, the guy's middle name was Hussein. Really, really interesting stuff. Completely failed events. And the air has been let out of it. CNN cut away from this drivel. Fox News often doesn't even take it. It's not going well. So Trump's next approach is, what about some interviews, building up the narrative that he does interviews, but Kamala Harris doesn't, even though she just did a perfectly normal interview with CNN. We'll discuss that after the break, as well as the latest panic over Robert F. Kennedy Jr. over at Fox News. What a day. If you value what we do at The David Pakman Show, remember to support us on Patreon. Go to patreon.com/David Pakman Show, where you can get access to behind-the-scenes videos, the daily bonus show, the commercial-free daily show. You can support the show for as little as $2 a month. Check it out at patreon.com/David Pakman Show. One of the real challenges we've identified right now in the American political discourse is that when the other side brazenly lies, and to even get back to the beginning of a conversation where there might be a reasonable disagreement, we have to first undo all of the lies. By definition, you're behind. And we have the perfect example of this from a bizarre interview Donald Trump gave a few days ago to the right-wing moms group, Moms for Liberty. It turns out that Moms for Liberty are only for liberty when it's the type of liberty they like and approve of. But that's probably a topic for a different day. Donald Trump bizarrely reclining during this entire interview, almost like we do at a Passover Seder, where you eat reclined, right? The other Jewish folks in the audience, I'm sure, know that you recline during the Passover Seder, at least in theory, and Donald Trump bizarrely reclining. It's just everything about this interview is strange. And Trump seems to suggest here that children, it's hard to even explain what he says because it's so ridiculous. Children are getting trans surgeries as he knows them, gender affirming surgery at school. Correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't that what Trump is saying here?
things that almost nobody in this room wants, who I think 85-90% of the country doesn't want if they actually do. But the transgender thing is incredible. Think of it. Your kid goes to school and comes home a few days later with an operation. The school decides what's going to happen with your child. And you know, many of these child's 15 years later say, what the hell happened? Who did this to me?
Now, of course, it's many of these children. That's the way conventionally the English language works. It's not many of these childs, it's many of these children. But Trump is saying your kid goes to school. A few days later, I guess they don't come home from school the first day. I don't know. They're gone at school a few days, and then they come home with an operation, having had an operation. Who did it? Are teachers performing surgery? Damn it. And do they have an anesthesiologist present or not? I mean, these are certainly questions we need answers to. It's so absurd that normal people would say, why do we even need to respond to this stuff? But every time they come up with something like this, large swaths of their followers believe it. Remember when, I think, was it Matt Walsh or Charlie Kirk? I think it was Matt Walsh. Yeah, Matt Walsh on the Rogan show said something like, there's clearly, was it tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions, some ridiculous number of double mastectomies being performed on prepubescent girls, which is hard to do since prepubescent girls don't have breasts. Like, none of it made sense. And it was just totally made up. But it spread like wildfire. And we had to fight to first clarify that that's fabricated out of thin air before we could even get to any kind of substantive conversation. So they win when they make this stuff up, as scary and absurd as this is. Trump going with the xenophobic rhetoric during the Moms for Liberty speech as well, with the immigrants are poisoning our country stuff.
But what's happening to our country is being poisoned, and your
Immigrants are poison.
schools and your children are suffering greatly because they're going into the classrooms, they're taking the seats, and they don't even speak English. It's crazy. And we have our people that aren't going into a classroom. We have students that were there last year that aren't allowed into the school this year. They're not allowed. It's crazy.
It's crazy. And of course, this is the dehumanizing language that is aimed at or has the function of diminishing people's self-esteem and self-worth, creating tiers and hierarchies of people, which these right-wingers just love. During this same interview, Donald Trump, who has claimed endlessly that he knows nothing about Project 2025, and when he looked at the list of their demands, he doesn't even like it, he echoes Project 2025. Listen to what he said here.
But the guys on television are woke, and a lot of the top people are woke, but they'll all be gone pretty quick. They're going to all be gone. You get them out. You get them out.
When I was in Milwaukee, I got...
That is Trump echoing one of the principles of Project 2025, which is he says there's these woke people in the military. We're going to purge them, and we're going to put in MAGA loyalists. That's Project 2025. At another point, Trump took on the topic. I don't even want to call it an issue because it's really not an issue. He took on the topic of Kamala Harris's previous employment at McDonald's, I guess, something I really don't care much about. But now they're going with that was a lie, I guess.
But she called him a racist. The bus, you remember the story of the bus, fake story probably. Well, she also said, I worked at McDonald's. It turned out she didn't work at McDonald's. Did anybody see that? After an exhaustive study that took about 20 minutes, they found out she never worked there. So, there's a lot of fake stuff going on. But we don't need that for a president. And our country can't stand it. We are really in trouble. We're a failing nation, whether you like it or not. And
Now, to be clear, I looked around. Do we have to get into the weeds? I guess we do, because they lie on all the time. It has not been determined that Kamala Harris did not work at McDonald's. It is true that she has claimed that she worked at McDonald's. There are those asserting that she did not, but I was not able to find anything one way or the other. Now, if it is true that she lied about it, then I would have something to say. But at this point in time, it has not been proven that Kamala Harris didn't work at McDonald's. They're only now making it an issue. So we'll see where that lands. Trump also admitted during this very strange interview that he wanted to make Ivanka Trump secretary to the United Nations. Talk about nepotism.
But she gave it up because she wanted to go and she didn't want something like the United Nations secretary. I wanted her to do that. I said, you would be a great ambassador to the United Nations secretary. There'd be nobody to compete with her. I tell you, she may be my daughter, but nobody could have competed with her.
There you go. Spoken like a true nepotist. I wanted my daughter to get a cushy gig, thanks to me being president. Nobody would have been better at the job than she would have, but she didn't want to do it. And finally, Trump winding down this terrifying interview by saying we don't need more defective people in the role of president.
See, she's defective. She's a defective person. And we don't need another defective person as president of the United States. We just had that.
He's right. We don't want a defective person as president of the United States. And that's why we have to make damn sure that Donald Trump doesn't become president of the United States. I received some emails over the weekend asking me to explain the Bernie to Trump pipeline. In other words, how does someone who at one point supported Bernie Sanders or claimed to end up supporting Donald Trump? I don't know why 6 people emailed me about this over the weekend. Maybe there was it seems like a really specific question that maybe there was some other commentator who talked about it. I don't know. But I'm glad to talk about this because it's something that in a sense I've addressed before. It is true that there are some Bernie Sanders supporters, previous Bernie Sanders supporters, who transitioned to Donald Trump. And the way I would characterize their transition would be, what is there in common between supporting Bernie and supporting Trump? Well, what you have in common is an underlying frustration with the political establishment, sometimes interpreted correctly, sometimes misinterpreted, but a perceived frustration with the political establishment. And it all goes back to the populist rhetoric that I've been warning you about for years, can sound good, but can lead people to support elected officials that would do terrible things when it comes to policy. Bernie's campaign resonated with voters because it opposed corporate influence in politics, it opposed economic inequality, it opposed in many ways the status quo. It resonated with, hey, the average person's not getting a fair shake and we need to do something about that. And when Bernie Sanders did not become the Democratic nominee, there were supporters in 2016 and 2020 who felt betrayed and disillusioned with the Democratic Party. And that kind of set them up to say, I'm open to something else. Now, as I've spoken to you about before, populism is primarily a rhetoric. If I say to you, hey, I'm a populist, there is not a specific set of policy ideas there. It's about championing the people, about the elite as some kind of enemy, the details of which really vary. If you listen, as I've said before, if you listen to the populist rhetoric of Bernie Sanders and you listen to the populist rhetoric of Tucker Carlson, it can sound similar, but the solutions they would propose are very different. Both left-wing and right-wing populists will use really similar rhetoric, but they'll propose drastically different solutions to the same problems when it comes to policy. Bernie Sanders' populism focused on economic justice, progressive social policy, and on the other hand, the Trump populism, the Tucker populism, targets immigrants, blames globalization, promotes an unhealthy nationalism. And so what is the overlap here is an anti-establishment rhetoric. And that has made it unfortunately easy for some Bernie Sanders supporters. Not me. I was a Bernie supporter. Not going to end up being tricked into supporting Trump or Tucker. But some Bernie supporters, because of the similarity of the rhetoric, have ended up drawn to Trump, even though on policy they couldn't be more different. Misinformation plays a role in this. Propaganda plays a role in this, trying to make Trump seem like the working class champion. There are similar stories. Bernie is a champion of the working class. Trump is a champion of the working class. The problem is, when it comes to Trump, it's a lie. Bernie has a 40-year public record as an elected official at all levels of government of supporting the working class. Trump has a few years of claiming to support the working class, undergirded by a lifetime of not paying workers, labor violations, and trying as a personal priority to be kept completely isolated from the working class, given his silver spoon upbringing in Manhattan and Queens. So similar rhetoric, true when it comes to Bernie, a fabricated lie when it comes to Donald Trump. And so the Bernie to Trump pipeline is a pipeline of populist rhetoric and the redirection and the hijacking of political discontent towards dramatically different solutions, depending on what is the narrative and what is the framing, and a slice of people have fallen for it. So what's the takeaway? Well, the takeaway is the importance for progressives to clearly articulate the differences between left and right-wing populism. I've been doing this for a long time, and I prefer to skip the populist rhetoric and say, hey, you know what? I'm a social democrat. It's a well-regulated form of capitalism. Here's the policy I believe in. If you believe in social democracy, if you believe in it in Sweden or in Denmark or in the United States, there is a coherent set of policy ideas there. The danger of the populist rhetoric, and I've been saying it for years, is that it is a rhetoric and not a set of policies. And that's how you end up with this slice of people that have gone Bernie to Trump, even though it makes no sense whatsoever, unless you don't really understand what's going on. We have a fantastic bonus show for you today. We'll talk about the gender gap becoming wider in terms of support for Kamala Harris versus Trump. We'll talk about the effects of Trump's new push for free IVF, and we will address in more detail the new MAGA obsession related to Kamala Harris working at McDonald's. All of those stories and more on today's bonus show. Sign up at joinpacman.com. I will see you then, and we're back tomorrow. Thanks a lot for watching today's show. I just want to take a second to tell you about today's sponsors. 8 Sleep makes a product that is amazing, which I love. It's called the Pod, and it fits around your existing mattress and cools down your bed so you can sleep better. They just released the newest model called the Pod 4 Ultra, which in addition to cooling down or heating up your bed, can even lift up your head when you're snoring so you can breathe better. It's incredible. To get $350 off, go to 8sleep.com/Pacman and use code Pacman. The link is in the description.